The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism-Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live and to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Nancy. Hi, Shannon. I love your animal print.
I was saying to Nancy before that I had something else that I pulled out of the closet and I was like, no, it's Friday. I got to wear my leopard. I think, is this leopard or tiger? I don't even know what this is.
Leopard, I think. Well, maybe a tiger. I don't know.
It might. I don't know what it is. But I was saying I got to wear this for Nancy because I know Nancy likes her animal prints. We usually a lot of times we have this Vulcan mind meld where we wear the same thing. And I was never an animal print kind of person, but Nancy would rock it on such a regular basis that I added things to my wardrobe so that I could leopard print with Nancy.
I love the print. I think it goes with everything. It's a neutral.
But I also was saying to Nancy that there's a bunch of shirts that I'm retiring because I'm so grateful that I'm going the right way on the scale, and so I got a bunch of shirts that are just
lost.
So as of the last time I weighed, which was a while ago, was 36 pounds, and there's another coworker that we have that has lost 100 pounds in COVID, which is just She's an inspiration to me.
I don't know how you do that in COVID. I've gone the opposite direction. I've gone up in COVID, as I think most people have.
Well, you know what? I think that we were headed that way, but my husband and I were both like, we can't afford to do it in COVID because we already have things that make us more likely to get COVID and have it more serious. And for our child, we just got really very motivated. But the truth is that once you start on something healthier in COVID, it's actually easier to do. Because we order our groceries and the time in the order, I just don't order things that are unhealthy. And so just have healthy things in the house.
Right. Tell us more about how you did it. When you say healthy, specifically, what kinds of foods are you eating and what kinds of food are you not eating?
Well, I'm not eating sugar and I'm not eating anything with flour. So those are the biggest things. Okay. I'm also, not snacking. There are times of the day. It's not that I'm doing intermittent fasting, which I know a lot of people are doing and having great success with, but I will say that, I eat my dinner and I try whenever possible. I'm not super rigid about it, but I try to eat dinner before and have it over by 7 o'clock. Right. And then I don't eat after that. And okay. I find I sleep better. I wake up earlier and right. I'm excited to have my breakfast and I don't skip meals, which that's the other thing I am very, very guilty of. It's like, well, lunch didn't happen, but then that gives me permission to eat dinner. And then I go, well, I didn't have lunch. So now I'm having something at 9:30 and then you might as well just smear it on your hips when you're doing that. Because okay. I always used to joke and say that I was on the sumo wrestler diet, which is you eat a lot of food and then you lay down and watch TV. That is how sumo wrestlers keep weight on. They very healthy, but they eat it and they lay down. We also purchased a treadmill and put it in the middle of our living room.
Good for you.
So, yeah. So that's what we've been doing. But I know many of our viewers have written in and said that they've been losing weight too. I do think, it's like now's the time to do it. When would now be a good time? You know what they say.
Right.
Because what else is there to do?
Right.
Right?
No time like the present. Don't put it
And
off.
let's face it, any minute now, people are, let's hope, people are going to be getting back out. They're going to be doing things, and you're going to want to fit into your clothes and be happy. So now's a great time. And it's about to be spring.
It is.
So, and then it will be summer. So it's a good time.
Speaking of that,
Yes.
it's about to be April.
Yes, it is. And we've got some news stories. Let's say this. We've got a great guest that's coming up a little bit later on in the show. Kirt Manecke is going to be with us to talk about his Smile and Succeed program for teens. But first, we want to do the news. And our first news story talks about it being April and maybe shifting the focus a little bit, Nancy. What do you think about this?
I think it's a great idea. What we're referring to is that Autism Society of America, as well as many other autism organizations, are no longer using the term autism awareness. They've shifted to autism acceptance as the slogan for the
and they're asking the media. They're putting out a call to media in preparation for April and saying, hey, can you guys shift to this too? Which I think is really smart. I want to say that maybe 5 years ago, TACA said, we don't want you to say autism awareness anymore either. And they got a lot of flack for it. And then they started talking about autism action, autism acceptance. And we started saying here, we'll pick whichever A word you'd like. Would you like to say Autism Action Month? Because I still feel that there's work that needs to be done in terms of awareness. But I absolutely think that where we need to get is to autism acceptance, but we're not going to get there with action. So I love that we're saying to the media, there's more to this than awareness. There's stuff that there's stuff we want you to do, and more than anything, we want you to get your compassion on and accept that just because you do it some way doesn't mean that if someone else does it a different way that it's wrong.
Right. And they're particularly focused on, when it comes to autism acceptance, on education and jobs, because this is an area that we need to have more acceptance of and be more inclusive of our autism community.
Amen to that. So thanks to Autism Society for putting this out to the media, and we hope that they listen up. This would be a good thing. So, okay, in another story that we have this morning, we're talking about the prevalence of Black and Hispanic children in the United States being diagnosed. And just yesterday, in the GAMA network, they published a study saying that, isn't it interesting that there's been a 40% increase in the number of Black and Hispanic children in the United States diagnosed with autism, a 40% increase since 2014. Now, there's so many things I'd like to say here and so many tantrums I would like to throw. But here we get into the controversy about, do we think that more children on the autism spectrum, more Black and Hispanic children have autism than in 2014, or do we think that more of them were diagnosed? Because this is the argument that always divides the community. What do you think, Nancy?
I think that it's more children have autism, more Black and Hispanic children have autism. I don't think this is a result of increased diagnosis.
Okay, and this is part and parcel of why it becomes so hard, because even when we talk about just the general population, for instance, over the years, people have charted and said, well, in 1980, this is what the prevalence of autism was. And then they say, here's what it was in 1990, and here's what it was in 2014, and here's what we project it to be in 2020, which nobody even has the numbers for that yet. But we see a sharp incline, right? And then we segment off into different things, and people say, no, those people always had autism. It's just that they changed the diagnostic criteria, or more people had access to the diagnosis. It is not increasing. And other people say, no, we're being better at diagnosing. And it becomes particularly poignant when I think we're talking about the Black and Hispanic communities, because we know for a fact that these communities are underserved. We know that. And so I think a lot of times people get caught up in that and go, well, we're fine at diagnosing these individuals, but there are a lot of people in the autism community. And I think, I'm at least halfway there, that suspect that if we were to diagnose everyone who it actually is on the spectrum and to give equal services, we would find that the prevalence for individuals in these communities is higher, is significantly higher than it is in the Caucasian community. And that this is a catastrophic failure on the part of our medical community, that in so many ways, we don't give services to people that need it, that we've covered this on the show recently, that, a mother going in and saying, my child, you and I both know, even as white women, how hard it was to get our doctor to listen to us when we were saying something's up with my child. But we're hearing that studies are showing that if you are a Black or a brown woman going in, you're less likely to be heard. And then your child is less likely to be diagnosed, which means you're less likely to get services. It's heartbreaking. It's heart-wrenching, especially when we suspect that your child is more likely to be on the spectrum if they are Black or brown, which is, just beyond devastating. Somebody says, as a Hispanic woman and a mother of Black children, I think it's both. I'm with you. I think it's both as well.
That's
what's that?
Johanny.
Yes. We don't need to say whole names on the show. We're saying hello to Johanny. We're saying hello to Amanda, Nasser, Christina, and Sam. We're so happy you guys are here with us.
Good morning.
So, we need for our politicians to hear that there is this increase. And regardless of what we think it might be, we need to have more funding. So it becomes incumbent upon us when we say to ourselves, what am I to do about this? Those of you who have young kids are in the middle of therapy, maybe don't have as much to do. But Nancy, I think it's incumbent upon those of us like us that our kids are a little bit older, that we need to, you're much better about this than I am. We need to be meeting with our politicians. We need to be making them aware of it. We need to be volunteering for them so that they get to know our face so that we can be heard. That when we say to them, I need your help and support on this, that they see us as constituents who are helping them as well. I hate it that it has to be that way, but I think that's the crux of it. Nancy, do you agree?
I agree. And I think we're at the point where many of our politicians are personally affected. I know when I spoke to Mayor Garcetti at a fundraising event, he said he had a nephew on the spectrum, and the same with Governor Newsom. He has a family member, I think through marriage, that's on the spectrum. So they were both very aware when I spoke to them about some of the issues. They were both aware. And, it's just a byproduct of more and more kids being diagnosed now and the prevalence rising, that we're going to see politicians that are personally affected.
Yes. I think that we need to hold them accountable, though, with their funding, that they make sure. I'm always afraid now, because that I love Dr. Stephen Shore, who says when you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And I think that we've all had that experience of having, I remember we had a teacher that, they were trying to figure out which teacher to put my son in whose class the following year. And they said, oh, we're going to give you to teacher X because she has a family member who's on the autism spectrum, right? And normally you would be like, woo, somebody who's going to get it. But I've learned that sometimes that means they get it even less because they think that everybody is like their family member, they don't get it. And in that instance, this was a teacher who had 2 family members that were on the spectrum, had only met them once, and was passing herself off as an autism expert. So I think that we have to put our kids in front of politicians and let them know, tell them the stories, that all of our kids are not the same. And we need to tell the stories of the families that are greatly impacted by autism, and tell them equally the success stories that if you give, funding to this, some of these kids, will go and do this. We need to be telling them the stories. So I'm going to vow that I'm going to be better and take a page out of Nancy's book, because Nancy takes the time to go and meet with these folks. I don't. I say things about them behind their back, both good and bad. But I don't put on heels and go to the luncheon, Nancy, like you do. But that's where stuff gets done.
Right.
And so as we come out of COVID, Nancy, I'm gonna make a vow that I'm gonna go with you to some of those things.
Okay, let's do it.
We can be the Lucy and Ethel of autism again. Saying good morning to Mary Jo. Good morning, Mary Jo. We're so glad that you're here. Okay, our third story this morning, some of these are just right? But we're talking about diagnosing autism in the pandemic. And this is an article from the New York Times. And the New York Times is saying that this is even harder in COVID, which I think we all would go, duh. But they brought up something that maybe hasn't been at the uppermost of all of our minds, that part of why it's harder is because our kids have not had the opportunity to socialize with each other. And that is when
Hold on, I lost a light. I'm getting technical assistance here.
Oh, all right. Get yourself some light here. But part of the difficulty is that, and for us, Nancy, I know when we were home with our kids when they were little, we may have thought that something was up with our kiddos, but we didn't really notice it until we saw them around other kids.
Right.
And we kind of compared notes and went, wait a second, these 3-year-olds are doing X, Y, and Z, and mine isn't. And that juxtaposition of seeing your kids up against other kids and going, I don't, and that's what spurs a lot of us to go to the doctor.
Exactly.
And the New York Times is saying,
if you don't have a point of comparison, it's very difficult to know developmentally where your child should be.
Yes. And so this is making it harder for parents and that some parents are home with kids who are hysterical and inconsolable, and the parents are thinking that it's them and that, something is wrong with their parenting, and they're not going to the doctor and saying, perhaps you should look at my child for autism. So I just want to say to anybody who's found their way here, it's because you have a question about autism. And it's better to ask than to not ask. And sometimes you will ask, like Nancy and I did the first time we went and asked, is my child, are they developing the way that they should be? Or is there something I should be concerned about? We were told no, and we had to come back and ask again. So I'm asking for all of you to honor that little voice that goes, is this the way it's supposed to be? Now, having said that, in conjunction with, somebody just wrote in and said, quick question, why do people think there's a cure for autism? If it ain't broken, don't fix it. And I can't thank you enough for writing that in, because I think that's the other part of this conversation that we all wrestle with. That when you look at your child and your child is tantruming and your child isn't developing in that typical way, does that mean something's wrong with your child? Does that mean something's wrong with you? And I, for one, want to say we don't put things into different categories and call them good or bad. But what do you want for yourself? For the person who wrote that in, who said, why do people, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? I have lots of friends, Nancy has lots of friends, people who are on the autism spectrum that I wouldn't change one iota. Not one iota. They are beautiful people. There is nothing wrong with them. I would like to be more like them. Let's just put that out there. I think the way their brains work is beautiful. Like, I would like to have my brain work more like my son's brain works. Total, hand to God, right? But there were times when my son, pardon the dog, there were times when my son was younger where he couldn't do what he wanted to do. Somebody, I need help, or I want chives on my baked potato. And just like any kind of learning, if you say to me, I want to learn how to ski, who am I to say you can't ski? And you might come to me and say, I want to ski, but you might be missing one leg. Guess what? You can still ski. If you want to ski, baby, let's ski. We'll find a way for you to ski. And I think that people have the right to be able to communicate. I think that everyone has the right to be able to learn. And in our very ableist society, for a long time, people were told, well, if you can't learn the way we all learn at school, then you don't get to come to school. And IDEA changed that and said, no, we'll take all learners. And if you need to learn in a different way, we will teach you in a different way. So I for one, want to say that, I think the curing autism, I think that nobody says that anymore.
Right.
But I think supporting autism, helping people with autism to learn the skills that are important to them, helping them to be able to do everything that they want to be able to do in life, that's what I'm about. And I think, Nancy, you're the same way.
Absolutely. Many times our kids that are diagnosed don't have the skills they need to succeed. And that's what we're for, providing them with those skills. Shannon, this article at the very end, had some good suggestions for what parents should look out for.
Share with us.
And this is adapted from Quirky Kids. A baby babbles by 6 months, and the babble increases in complexity. By 9 months, a baby responds to his or her name. By 15 to 18 months, a child can say some words and follow simple directions. By 18 months, a child can put 2 words together. By 2.5 to 3, a child can speak in simple sentences with some fluency and inflection. A question sounds like a question. By 4 months, babies make eye contact and respond with social smiles. By 1 year, they can point to show interest and wave goodbye. From about 2, they respond to other children and can interact in games with some back and forth.
There we go. Great things to look at. And if you take your child to be looked at for autism, I want you to know that there are great resources to help your child. The person that asked the question about cure said, also the fact that people think that electroshock therapy works for curing autism, it's just torture that's legal. It's also an incurable thing. It's a different brain structure. And we agree with you. Here at Autism-Live, we completely concur with you. Electroshock therapy is not a form of therapy. It is for autism. It may be for other things. I can't know about that. But electroshock therapy is not something for autism. It is torture. We are completely opposed to the Judge Rottenberg Center and what it does. I want to throw up on them. Let me say that across the board. Anybody who ever would think about putting a child there, I want to tell you, don't. They are horrible, and I'm 100% clear on that. I know, Nancy, that you felt the same way.
Absolutely.
We do not, we're here at Autism-Live, we're about celebrating the individual and helping them to be all that they want to be and providing the resources for them to be all that they want to be. And that it has to be driven by that, that we not try to overlay onto people. Look, how I make contact is not how everybody needs to make eye contact. And that's that whole thing of awareness and to go to acceptance. We need to teach employers to not judge whether someone is trustworthy by how much they make eye contact. That's exactly the difference in the shift and the way we think about things that we're hoping to get to. So I love that you're here. I want you to know we're allies, that we agree completely with you. Hey, I'm also saying, and Christina says, my son's superpower is autism. Absolutely. Somebody else said, hi, Shannon and Nancy. You ladies are doing a remarkable job informing many people around the world, including me. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here. So Nancy, oh, and Johanny says, I totally agree. Diagnosing now has to be crazy hard because our family is in a standstill. We are in therapy, but feel we are not moving forward as well as we did before. And we really can't find new providers. I'm so sorry to hear that, Johanny. And somebody else said this is an important discussion. Yes, I totally, we're getting comments now about the electroshock thing in the Judge Rottenberg Center. It's appalling. It's absolutely horrible. If I knew what to do to shut them down, I would do it. I can't even, I get sick to my stomach when I think about it. If you feel the need to know more about them, be prepared. It's very triggering and very upsetting, but 60 Minutes has covered them. It's horrible, horrible what they do there. I wish New York would outlaw that, but we got to shift because we have a great guest who's here with us. We actually have had Kirt on the show before, and we tried to have him back on a couple of weeks ago. Talk about moving it into the column of ways that we can help support our kiddos and especially our teens for those employment skills. Kirt is, he's got a great book, Smile and Succeed for Teens, and he's now got a program. He was very responsive to COVID and what people have been asking for. So he's going to tell us about his social skills program that is online. Kirt, are you with us? I think he's there. Kirt, can we, have we got him, Traven? We had a problem a couple of weeks ago.
I am.
He's going to be joining us.
Can you hear me? Hi, Shannon.
Hi, Kirt.
Nancy. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We just aren't seeing you yet.
We can't see you yet. Oh,
there
you're
you are.
down. Now you're right side up.
Oh.
We've got you. Yes, you're cutting out a little bit, but we do have you.
Hi, Shannon. Hi.
Hi, thanks for joining us, Kirt.
Oh, okay.
Well, we're in the seventh ring of hell because you're cutting in and out again, Kirt. We had you on a couple of weeks ago. We had problems.
Hi, Shannon.
We went through a whole thing.
Hear me okay.
We can now. Go, Kirt. Talk. Now. Okay, here's what we're going to do. So, Traven, I want you to show the video that Kirt gave us about his program. I want to tell everybody that his book is Smile and Succeed, and you can get that on Amazon. And it's a great manual for helping you to help your teen or for them to help themselves, to know the basic social skills, to give them choices about how they want to interact with people. And you can take the class online. So Traven, whenever you're ready, let's roll the video. While we're rolling the video, see if you can help Kirt so that we can have him so that we can speak to him.
In today's wired world, many students lack critical social and career skills. Smile and Succeed for Teens online supplemental course, based on the Teacher's Choice Award-winning book, provides social, emotional learning, and career skills to help your students excel in school, work, and life. Flexible for in-class or remote learning, self-paced or instructor-led, the engaging content and interactive modules provide the ideal solution for all students, including those with disabilities or in transition. Embedded teaching guides provide differentiated activities and lesson plans, allowing instructors to further enhance learning opportunities. This easy-to-use resource uses its own standalone content delivery platform or can be integrated with your school's learning management system. Ensure student success. Schedule a live demo or purchase the Smile and Succeed for Teens online course today.
We've got, oh, I'm muted. Kirt, say something so we can see if we can hear you. It's not going to happen. Okay, so you can see from that, go ahead, Traven, we're gonna have to try it again another time. But you can see from the video, we loved the book when we got it over a year ago, Nancy. We thought it was great for both of our boys. I think that Kirt, because of his background, is very sensitive to the fact that, look, we all on the spectrum and not on the spectrum know that there are these unspoken, unwritten rules. And sometimes just knowing what the rule is, you go, oh, is that important? Because that's not important to me. But if it's important to someone else, then I'm capable of doing it when I need to do it, if that will help me to be successful. And so what Kirt tries to do is tell teens, both on the spectrum and off the spectrum, here are the things that if you choose to do them, people will think X, Y, and Z. So I may not feel like smiling, but if I do smile at someone, they're going to assume that I like them. And if you don't explain that to somebody, I know people on the spectrum who are like, really? Is that a thing? I mean, Nancy, I know you have taught me things since I have known you about how people make first impressions that I didn't know, that I wasn't raised with, that were not a part of my upbringing. And now that I know those, that doesn't mean I have to change my life. It doesn't mean I have to change my mind, but I'm aware of it now. Mm-hmm. And awareness gives me choices. Right, and so what Kirt does is he gives people choices and says, here's something that can help you. I know my son learned early on, they did a program with him about, it was building towards safety, where first we had to take pictures of people who worked like at Trader Joe's and Target and Walmart. And we had the pictures developed and they would go through and he would identify what was their uniform, what made them a worker, because later on they wanted him to be in the store and if he needed help to find a worker in that store and go up to them and ask them help. So this is how this whole thing started. We just took the pictures and he identified that, oh, at Target, if it's a worker, they're wearing khaki, it used to be, I don't know if it's still this way, khaki pants on the bottom and a red shirt. And the people wearing red shirts and khakis on the bottom, and they had a name tag. So he kind of keyed into, they have a name tag, and he was just starting to learn to read. So whenever we would be at a store, we would be prompting him and saying, who are the workers here? And he would look for the uniform and look for the name tag, and he would go, that's the worker. And in doing that, he noticed what their name was. And so when they would talk to him, he would read their name tag and he would say, they would say, hello, how are you? And he would say, hello, Jamal. And Jamal would go, dude, how are you? And get all excited because people like it when you say their name. And he learned that by all on his own. We didn't even teach him a program that. But so we would, you know how they have the greeters at Walmart? And a lot of times there are these wonderful elderly people. There was this one French lady that worked at the Walmart that we would go to, and we would come in and I don't remember what her name was. Let's say it was Cindy, but we would come in and she would say, bonjour. And he would say, good morning, Cindy. And she would light up like a Christmas tree. And he just learned, if I say people's names, I get a great reaction back. This was not even something that I had thought of in my life, but he learned that, and that became currency for him. He still does this to this day, that when he meets somebody, it's meaningful to him once he knows their name. Like if he shakes hands now with somebody and they'll say, oh, you know, yesterday we had Dr. Shaw on. If he met her and she said hello and they shook hands, not in COVID, but if they shook hands and he would say, Dr. Shaw, it's good to meet you, because he learned that's currency and people react nicely. So what Kirt has done is he's taken all of these little things that are like that and he teaches them to teens so that they can choose to do them or not choose to do them, which I think is super awesome. And there's a book that you can do exercises with your teen or give it to them for them to do to see if they want it. But he also has these online courses now. So we apologize to Kirt that he wasn't able to be here, but we hope that you will check out Smile the book. And Traven, do we have the website to send people to for them to be able to do the online course? And it's all self-directed.
There it is.
Is it? Where is
Well,
it?
no, it's
see
not
it.
the website.
There's the Smile online course and books.
The website is smilethebook.com.
Smilethebook.com. There we go.
Right. He also has a course about customer service, Shannon.
Which, you know, for me, that is like everything. I am all about good customer service, and we all know that it has gone by the wayside, that nobody is teaching anybody again how to do good customer service. And here's the wild thing. When someone knows how to do good customer service, they move up the food chain of where they're working faster.
Mm-hmm.
I've told the story before about in our grocery store, there was a wonderful young man that had Down syndrome. And somebody had taught him excellent customer service, and he always gave the best customer service. And he started out, they hired him to just help bring the carts in, but he was so good at that and so nice to people that then he became a bagger, and then he became the head bagger. And then they decided to make him one of the cashiers. And there was this whole ripple through the community about, is he going to be able to do the cashier thing? And his manager believed that he could and believed that he should. And he became the cashier, and then he became the assistant manager. And I don't live there anymore, but I wouldn't be surprised to find out if he's managing the store.
That's amazing. I love that story, Shannon.
And I tell you that all of that happened for him because he was good at customer service.
Right.
And if we can, I know so many of you are so frustrated because you have teens and young people, and we know that statistically folks on the autism spectrum are way underemployed, and it's criminal because they have job skills that are often off the chart better than the neurotypical peers that they're submitting their job application up against. But sometimes these foolish little silly things get in the way. You know, they didn't make enough eye contact, and so the manager chose the other person. And if we can tell them, you know, it's just like taking an acting class. You know, if you choose to do this, you know, and say the person's name and make eye contact, you know, you'll get the job. But then to teach the customer service skills, those kids will be promoted. Those young adults will be promoted. Their life will change. These are great skills to learn. So, like, I want to say that, I hope I'm saying it right, Fateh is joining us from Austria. Yes. And there's been more of a discussion about the electroshock therapy in our chat. And I just want to address, somebody said that, you know, they're horrified by that. They agree that it's torture, but they said some higher functioning people with autism feel that ABA therapy is torture. And I want to take just a couple of minutes here on the show to talk about that. In fact, I'm working on an article right now about what the differences are between good ABA and what a lot of people are referring to as ABA. Because I know that many people on the autism spectrum feel, and it's not just people on the autism spectrum, there are many people who feel that ABA therapy is torture. And I always want to say that everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and that we have many adults who are on the autism spectrum who tell harrowing stories of having had ABA therapy when they were younger, and they feel that it was traumatizing and that they were tortured. And I never, ever want to in any way impinge upon them to tell their story. I want them to tell their story, and I want us all to hear it, because it is their story, and I think that those stories are factual. I am not in any way saying that those stories aren't true. What I am saying is that those people had really bad ABA, and I'm very sorry for it, but it is not the same as good quality ABA. Just the other day, I was on a parent group, and somebody wrote in and said that their ABA, maybe it was on Ask Dr. Doreen, they were saying that their ABA provider had said that they couldn't do therapy because of their child, the way that their child was. They couldn't do it for longer than 2 hours. I think it was on Ask Dr. Doreen. And I love Dr. Doreen's response because she was like, no, that's bad ABA. If your child, they haven't made it fun enough for him. And I think it's really important that we talk about the difference between quality ABA and the schlock bleh that people are calling ABA. Because I think it's important that people report it when somebody does bad ABA. And if it's torture, it is bad ABA. The very basic tenets of ABA say that we will only keep doing a behavior if it is in some way rewarding. So if someone is torturing, pestering, whether it's physical or berating a child, is not ABA. Because ABA, as you know, Nancy, is about getting the child to the reward. And so these other things where there is punishment involved, or, you do this, or
right. There's some bad ABA that uses aversives.
And that is not ABA.
No.
It's not even, we can talk about ABA versus good ABA, but that's not even ABA. If somebody is using an aversive for your child, like we've heard stories from adults who say that their hands were taped so that they couldn't flap their hands.
Right.
That is not appropriate.
Mm-mm.
There is no ABA program that would say that that is appropriate. That is wildly inappropriate. What ABA says, what good quality ABA says, that this behavior, we only want to address this behavior if it's preventing the individual from doing something that we reasonably feel that they will want to do. So this behavior might be something that is preventing the child from learning how to write, because this is all they can do, right? In that case, maybe if we feel that this individual is capable of writing, because they might have a book in them that is amazing, but we're never going to get to typing or writing if we're doing this. That doesn't mean we get rid of this. This has a purpose. And for every child, this is different. For some children, it's to calm them. For some children, it's a visual where you go like this and you see a rainbow. And that's exciting. And if I don't have anything else to do, why would I not want to see the rainbow, right? Whatever the purpose of this is, we have to honor that. We cannot just rip that out and go, that doesn't work for us. It clearly is working for them. So we find with some children, if it's the visual stimulus, what we do is we give them, there are these wonderful pens that have little plane propellers on them that are battery operated. And if we sit it on a stand in front of the child, they get that visual stimulus, and now their hands are free to write. And the child is not less happy. The child is happier. My need is met, and I am writing. And now I'm growing and I'm learning, but I still have my need being met. For the child that this calms them, we have to find a different way to calm them, or because we can't just take it away. And good ABA says there's a function for the behavior, and we don't just poo-poo the function. We have to fulfill the function in a different way, a way that is actually meaningful to the individual before we can work on it. So, but if you get somebody who is doing bad ABA, they go, oh, this will never work. We have to extinguish that. And there's no discussion of how do we fill the need. Don't work with those people. Don't work with those people. The other thing about the other hallmark of quality ABA for me is that they plan for generalization from the beginning. So it is not about your child's going to be in therapy forever. Whenever we teach something, before we teach it, we have a plan for this is how we will attempt to teach it, but we will change it along the way, because good ABA says the individual is never wrong. Not ever. Not ever. If we're teaching something and it's not working, we need to change the teaching method. We need to change what we're doing. The individual is never wrong. Really important tenet of good ABA. But then when we're teaching something, we have to have the plan for how we teach it in the beginning, how we teach it in the real world, and then how they will be able to use this skill in the real world without us. And if we are not planning for that in the beginning, we are not doing service to this person. So I always say to parents who are talking to an ABA provider and that they talk about, well, what do we want to work on? Oh, well, we want to work on toilet training. Great. Just ask them the simple question, how will we work on generalization starting from the beginning? And if they don't have an answer right then, right there, without having to go look it up or thinking about it, it's not your ABA provider. Because those are the kind of ABA providers that maybe they'll get your child toilet trained, but if they didn't plan for generalization, your child becomes the child who can only pee in the potty at home and has accidents at school. And you try to go on vacation and your child is impacted because they don't know how to pee in the potty in the cabin that you rented.
We have a question.
Yeah.
Can you give examples of punishments that don't look like punishments during ABA? So let's address punishments is a term that we really wouldn't use.
Well, I mean, okay. Punishment is a very specific word, and within the ABA world, they're going to call it something different than what you and I would call it. So we have to address that to begin with. But from parent to parent, let's talk about, like, for instance, there was a time when people were doing behavior modification where if a child, for instance, said something over and over and over again, they would put hot sauce on their tongue.
They would put what on their tongue? Hot sauce?
Hot sauce. Like, hot chili pepper sauce on their tongue.
That's the use of an aversive, which we were talking
That's
about.
an aversive. And that's a punishment for doing that. And that is inappropriate. What we want to do instead in ABA is we'll figure out what the function of the behavior is. Why is the person saying this phrase over and over and over again? Because we can't assume we know. And it isn't always the same thing, right? Sometimes our kids will say something over and over and over again because they want attention. So what we do is a behavior intervention plan that says, here's what we will do is we'll give them lots of attention during the time this before they do it. So maybe they won't get to the point where we do it. And if they do it for attention, we don't give the attention for it, but then we will distract them into something where they have an opportunity, and then we'll give them attention for that. Right? Which is very tricky, very difficult to learn, but it's vastly different than just, a lot of people think it's just ignoring. It's not. It's not. We want to teach them. We want to first do an antecedent modification is what they call it. So we give more attention. Like, let's say that we see that they're doing it after school, that they're repeating the same thing over and over again. So, and we find out that it's for attention. It might be for something else. We'll talk about that in a second, because it all comes down to the function. So after school, they keep repeating the same phrase from the same movie over and over and over again, scripting, movie talk, and we decided it's for attention. First thing we do, antecedent modification. As soon as we pick them up from school, we give them a ton of attention so that they don't have to ask for attention, right? Other times during the day, we're going to teach them how to appropriately ask for attention. Not in the time period where we would see this behavior, but maybe first thing in the morning, we're going to play a game where I'm going to stand here and I'm going to be looking over here, and I want you to tap me in the shoulder and say, "Excuse me, Mom, can I ask a question?" And then I give you all the attention in the world. No matter what happens, and for different kids, different parents, different ways that we teach. When they're older, they're not going to do that. They might say, "Hey, Mom," right? But when we're teaching them that, we want to give them that attention immediately all the time. You might be on the phone, an important business call, but you have to say, "Excuse me 1 second. Yes, what do you want?" So that they learn, hey, that thing works. Later on, we can show them, waiting, which is that I give you my attention and I hold up a finger, and that means I've got to wait. But waiting is only 10 seconds then. And then we stretch that out over time, right? But we always have a consequence strategy in a behavior intervention plan. And the consequence strategy is, if all else has failed and this happens, how do I react? So if I've done the antecedent modification, I've been teaching how to get attention appropriately, and still I messed up somewhere and we're in the car and the child is asking the same thing over and over again, my consequence strategy is I do not give you attention, the thing that you want, because that will mean that there's more of it. So I don't, the child says the term, I don't respond to it, but I don't stop there. I have to now get us back on track again. So I don't respond to that, but then I'll go, oh my gosh, look at that over there. Is that an ice cream truck? Right? And now the child goes, it is an ice cream truck. And now I give the attention. And now I shower as much attention as possible. I am not ignoring this individual for hours in the day. I'm ignoring the one response that I didn't want to do. It's such a fine line of understanding, but we don't ignore the behavior. And we don't ignore it for a long period of time. We ignore it for a second, distract, and then get them back on track. And we shower, we give them the thing they need. Now that's if it's attention. Sometimes kids script for other reasons. And for each reason, there is a different intervention. And it's so important that we work with professionals who can tell us the function of the behavior is this.
Yes.
Here's the behavior intervention plan. And as parents, and Nancy, I know I'm singing your song, but the hardest part is to understand the nuances of it, because we tend to grab onto the big ideas, which are, oh, okay, I ignore that then. And miss that, oh, I needed to be feeding it first. And I don't just ignore it. I don't ignore the child. I ignore it in the second that it happens. And now I got to distract. And then I got to get back to the antecedent, which is tons and tons and tons of attention. So I think, what I have seen and heard, to go back to your question about the punishments that people see in ABA, is I have heard of people saying that it's ABA who have hit a child. That is never ABA. That is not ABA. That person, you need to call the police. If anyone is ever working with your child and hits them, no. Big no. I would encourage you to stop that right then, call 911 and say this person, and make a record of it, and, file everything you can file. That is not appropriate. But it's also not appropriate for people to berate your child. In ABA, if your child does something and they've received instruction, at a certain point, you might get to something that that's with older kids. They don't do this with the little ones, the new ones, where they get to a no prompt. And this is for kids that have developed skills, but are, for whatever reason, they're struggling with something. But this is an informational no, not a judgmental no. So the child does something, and we don't want in the beginning, we're doing errorless learning where we're prompting every time, right? This older kids, we've gone past this. So let's say that, I'm doing something with them and I'm doing discriminative, and I've got the bottle cap and I've got my phone and I've got my book here, right? And I put the 3 out for them and I go, for instance, and this looks weird, this is just one of the phases of teaching, but I might say touch phone, right? And the child doesn't know the difference between a bottle cap, a book, and a phone. So, but we've been working on this for a while, and it's an older child. And so they go to touch the book. Now, in the beginning, I would take their hand physically, move it over to the phone and go, yes, that's the phone. Yay, yes, touch phone. And then I would move them around and I would go touch phone. And if they went to go do the book, again, I would physically prompt them gently, put their hand on the phone and go, yes, the phone, that's the phone. So the child gets the reward of being right, even though they weren't going to be right. Later on, when they go to touch the book, when it's the phone, I might go, no. And not a big no, right? It's an informational no. And now the child moves their hand to the phone and I go, yes, and I give the reward. Now, if they go to touch the book, it's called a no prompt. So they go to touch the book and I say no. And they try and they touch the bottle cap and I say no. Again, not judgmental, not mean, not no, you got it wrong again. Just informational, no. And the third time I'll go touch phone and then I prompt and put it on the phone. It's just a method of learning. It's like another phase down the road. But if you are hearing somebody go, no, we went over this before. Oh my gosh, no. We do not take people's self-esteem away. That is not allowed in ABA. And I find that a lot of what people tell me is that people are not being kind and compassionate to their children. And that is not good quality ABA.
Right. And I know, Shannon, you're passionate about this.
Oh my gosh. Because I believe so much in good ABA, and I hate it when people are being given stuff that isn't good ABA. And I further hate it when then it is their complete right to talk about it. But then other people come and they go, oh, I don't want to do that with my child. I was that parent.
Right.
My child was diagnosed and they said, whatever you do, don't do ABA. It'll torture him and it'll turn him into a robot. And I went, well, we are not doing that. And I, for 6 months, I was offered ABA. I was in this crazy circumstance where I was being offered free ABA at a time when nobody else was getting it because I was in California. And I said no. Over and over and over again, being the righteous mom of I'm going to take care of my child. And then I met a child with autism who was speaking and who was happy and who was interacting with his parents. And he was 2 years older than my son. He was everything that I had hoped for my child. And those parents said to me, we're doing ABA. And I was like, oh, and they said, but we're doing the best ABA. And that was how we got started at CARD. And that little boy is a professional drummer. The one that I saw is a professional drummer out with his professional life. And my son is graduating from high school and picking which college he wants to go to. This is why I get so passionate about it.
It's life-changing. Good ABA can be life-changing and can alter the course of life.
And you know this, Nancy, it's important to get it as early as you can.
Yes.
And that every minute counts. And I mourn those 6 months. I know you mourn the time that it took you to get started.
Right.
And when
people relatively late. Yeah. Wyatt didn't start ABA till he was 4 3/4 because he was not diagnosed adequately.
And nobody said to you, Nancy, you need to drop everything and go get good quality ABA. Like nobody was saying that to you. And I don't want for our viewers to not hear that there is a difference and you got to get good ABA. And as I said, I'm working on an article right now to clearly define it. Somebody says, is it possible, did you see any kid that was out of the spectrum after therapy become normal life? Yes. I see these people every day of the week. My son has a normal life, and I know so many people who have a rich life where they don't need support. I also see people who continue to need support. It is not a one size fits all.
Right.
And there is no like hard and fast guarantee that if you do this, then your child will never need support. But the science shows us that if you start early enough, if you do the right amount of good quality ABA at the right time, that it's like between 42 and 48% of those kids, if they've had the right amount at the right time and it's good quality ABA, the minimum of what studies have shown is that 42% of those kids will go on to lead a life where they need no support. That does not mean that they think the way that I do. They still think the way their brain functions in a different way. This is why I say to you, I wish my brain focused and worked like my son's does. His brain is better than mine, but he couldn't speak and he can now. And he couldn't write and he can now. And he's choosing which college he wants to go to for screenwriting. And this was a kiddo who could not write his own name. And what a shame if we had never given him the ability to write his name. Now, for the other...
Someone is asking you, does your son have friends? He understands everything?
Yep, he understands everything and he has great friends. Even in COVID, because he had such good friends, he and his friends get together almost every night at 8:00 and do something together online. And when they could get together in person, they had a thing. There's a group of guys, there's like 12 of them that hang out together. And once a month, they would have this thing where they would go to a movie together and then go and eat in a restaurant afterwards. And a lot of times my son was on the planning committee of how do we buy all the tickets ahead of time? How do we reserve a table? And keep in mind that now for a year, he's been home. They were just, I'm heartsick about this. They were just at the point where girls had come into the group.
Right.
And then COVID comes. So, but he will get there. When he goes to college, he has the ability to make new friends. And these are good friends. These are not just peripheral friends. They talk about the big stuff in life. And this is what I wished for. And I have that. And I have it, I know, because of good quality ABA. One more question.
We have somebody else that wrote in, I love watching you. Your information is very helpful. I just don't see how ABA is not good. My daughter's ABA team is very nice to her and they are teaching her. I don't see them as being tough. So that's good to know that you've got
good quality ABA. That's what it should look like, Valproven. The problem is that we have people who don't have what you have. So I would say to you, count your blessings and make sure that you get every drop of that you can get, because there are people out there who don't have that. Somebody else says, my daughter is 2.5 old. I worried about her a lot. She speaks ABC, twinkle, etc. She doesn't follow instructions and even doesn't respond to her name. So at 2.5, my question for you, this goes back to that New York Times article. Do you have a diagnosis? And if you don't, I want you to know that diagnosing girls is harder, that you're going to have to work that much harder to make sure that you get in front of someone who understands, because they might look at her, and I don't know whether your daughter's on the spectrum or not. Let's say that. And I don't have the ability to diagnose, and no one has the ability to diagnose based on what you just said. No one. But I'm saying to you, and I think Nancy, you'll also agree, if you're worried, you should follow that instinct and get her in front of someone who has the ability to see whether she's on the spectrum or whether there's a hearing issue. But her not responding to her name is definitely, she needs some support. At the very least.
She's writing in that they have an appointment on the 29th of March, an assessment appointment. Very good. Okay. That's what you need.
Great. So the one thing I will say to you is, when you go into that appointment, take notes on behaviors that you're concerned about and make sure that they give you the time to go over all of those things. And if they say, yes, we're diagnosing with autism, ask for a prescription for ABA. And at 2.5, don't leave that office unless they give you 40 hours a week. This is my advice to you. Like, just say, no, I've read the studies, and if you want, email me and I'll send you the studies. But for 2.5, regardless, because the fact that she's talking, they're going to tell you she doesn't need 40. That's a lie. If you do 40 hours, if you can get 40 hours, which is really hard in COVID, but get the prescription anyway, and then fight to get the 40 hours, at 2, be able to finish really early. You might be done in a year or 2 years. But if they give you a watered down prescription of 20 hours, it's going to take longer. You want the full prescription. At 2.5, she doesn't have as many other things to do. Get the full prescription if you get the diagnosis. If you don't feel when you leave that office that the person listened to you, make another appointment. Come back to us. Yeah.
Okay, I think we're out of time, aren't we?
We're so out of time. And Nancy,
Thank you for those basics on ABA, Shannon, though. I think that's very helpful.
But I apologize. I get so hepped up, and I'm used to doing the show by myself, and I don't give you enough chance to talk. And you are a wealth of knowledge about this as well.
Thank you, Shannon. Yeah, but I really, the basics of ABA are so important for us to learn, that this is based on positive reward for our kids, and it's basically geared towards positives, not negatives. I think is so important to
absolutely. And for those of you who are like, I don't have an appointment yet, or I don't know what to do, I want to encourage you, you can start today. Go to skillsforautism.com or go to ibehavioraltraining.com. Take a look at what is there. We have people in different places in the world that don't have good access to ABA, and this is the solution in the meantime. ibehavioraltraining.com or skillsforautism.com. There is also a book that is it's effective evidence-based treatment for children on the autism spectrum. And it is written, just put in Dr. Grampiche on Amazon and look for a book that it says The Card Method. And you will see it's exactly what our sons had access to. Right. So Nancy, thank you for being here. Big week next week day where we are doing Filing for Due Process 101, how to do it as a parent without a lawyer. You're not going to want to miss it. We'll see you on Monday. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And give yourselves a hug from me.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching Autism Live. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.